Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. This is Mick from Yamdu, and today we're going to be taking a look at production planning, the production office within Yamdu. So from the perspective of production coordinators, managers, secretaries, assistants, everyone that works in this area, everyone that's right at the heart of every production and has to manage a lot of information. How do they do it? How can Yamdu help? And what's the feedback they've given us? First of all, just to make sure that you can all hear and see what I'm presenting, could someone maybe quickly mention in the chat that they can indeed hear me okay and that they can see my presentation to begin with? And I guess I can see already that there's typing, so I guess that's a yes. Okay, perfect, everyone. Thank you very much for that. And again, welcome for joining. So yes, let's first of all take a little look at what this presentation is all about. Then we'll jump into Yamdu and take a very clear look at, all of the main areas that Yamdu can help when it comes to managing productions. So we'll start, and of course you can see here we always start with creativity invites chaos. Any visual project of any scale will involve some degree of chaos, lots of things to be managed. And we would never, of course, say, even though this is a meeting and a presentation strictly for production coordinators and production people, to be honest, we could never cover everything that these people do because it is incredibly complicated. It could be anything. Every project will throw up lots of different things that need to be accomplished. So today we're looking at all of the things that are tangible and doable within Yamdu. So let's take a look first at this presentation. So we, of course, aim to be the #1 production hub for next level collaboration. Collaboration is at the heart of everything we do. You need to communicate with the people you work with, and we want to facilitate that, of course. So today we are looking at Yamdu for the production office. And this is, I think, part of a new series we want to do where we look at things very directly in terms of certain personas, certain people, certain groups of people that work together. So the challenges, and I hope I've narrowed it down to some of the main ones here. This is based, of course, on feedback from all of the personas we've already mentioned, is that it's difficult to store, share, generate, distribute, and track information with confidence and authority. By confidence, of course, that's the feeling of, I know I have done something and it has been accomplished. And then authority is also the feeling of, I can tell someone I sent that yesterday at 2 p.m. and I can perhaps even see that you read it, for example, or I distributed the latest version this morning. So we know we've done things, we can track we've done things. We want to take away that anxiety of not being sure whether or not something has actually occurred. So this is, to really boil it down, the challenge that we hear and what we're trying to help people in these positions with. And the production office really is the nucleus of the project because it's where a lot of the information emanates from. It's where a lot of information is also taken in and managed and stored and shared and versioned over time. It's also the main source of project truth. And that's something, again, we hear quite often. If someone doesn't know something or they're unsure about something, or they need to find out a piece of information, or they want to make sure there hasn't been some update they're not aware of, they'll often then, of course, reach out to various people in the production office looking for detail, whether it's on set, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email. It's that sense that this is the place where all important information can be found. And the key thing with the production office is that, of course, problems will occur, whether it's communication or a missed piece of detail or something that isn't quite right. But the production office is also very adept at preempting problems that may occur. And I think that is, of course, vitally important. It's not just about reacting to things, it's about proactively saying, if we don't send this by that time tomorrow, or if this person is not aware of what we plan to do, we're going to run into problems. So it's often the kind of quiet, unseen, sometimes unheralded work that's done by production office members that avoids major problems. And as you all know, the closer you get to production, the riskier and the more expensive those problems can be. And I see, Jamie, you got the audio figured out, so I'm glad to hear that. Thanks everyone as well for helping out. So please feel free, by the way, as you attend today to add questions, to share any feedback you might have. And yeah, if anything is unclear, of course, just let me know, because I'll check in at the end, especially just to see if there's anything else you'd like to ask or take a look at. So what did the production office do? And of course, maybe the main question, what can Yamdu help with? So we can help, of course, with storage of information, with data, the contracts, the contact information, files, documents, mailing lists, travel information, all of that detail. We can also help when it comes to the distribution of important detail like sites, call sheets, schedules, dues, and so on. And of course, there's also data protection aspects as well, whether that's watermarking or whether it's just having a paper trail where, in the example I gave earlier, someone says they didn't receive some information. Well, you can point directly to the thing being sent at a certain point. Or you can also even confirm that they received it at a certain point as well. So we did ask our community in advance of this meeting, and that's something that we're always very grateful to be able to do. How do you control all of this information? Maybe also, how did you previously control this information? And again, of course, things have changed, moving away from paper copies to more online storage, emails, and so on. But of course, a lot of detail is still literal paperwork. There was a lot of manual watermarking. So when we introduced watermarking, for example, we did not fully realize that this actually is a huge time drain that can really soak up a lot of the time and energy of the people that need to do this. So rather than have to individually watermark 20 different files for 50 different people, wouldn't it be nice if you could do all of that in one go, for example? There's also, of course, constant emailing. That's probably something that will always be there or always be a necessity, but with Yamdu, you should cut down significantly on the amount of emails you need to send. And then there's photocopying, phone calls, and of course, storing files. It's one thing to just throw all files into an online database or an online storage function, but it's another thing to find that detail and see the different versions of that detail and see when that information was sent. So they're all small things, but they all have a big outcome over the course of the production. So looking at this older workflow, we ask, and this is again, I guess, a question we ask all of our clients and everyone that's involved in our community: was this or is this an easy and reliable process? And the answers generally are that it's challenging, it's quite draining, it's confusing in the sense that you can never be entirely sure at a certain point when something was shared, or have you made a mistake, or are you confident you did something? That's something that, of course, is not only confusing, but it's also damaging to the project, and in certain situations can make certain people look bad, to be quite blunt. You do not want to seem incompetent if you think you shared something, but then you find it in your outbox afterwards. It's not a nice feeling, and a few people communicated some horror stories in this respect, and that's, of course, what we're here to try and avoid. You also see outmoded, and again, this is part of the evolution of film production management over the last 10 years, over a longer period, of course, but moving away from paper copies and from physical things into digital information. But of course, even with file sharing and file saving and emails and so on, it's still not completely optimized for tracking, managing, and doing all the things that you need to do. So the challenges, just to reiterate before we jump into the system, it's difficult to store, share, and track information. There's a lot of phone calls, there's a lot of emails, and information can either be lost or hard to find. These are all basic things, they're all fundamental things that can occur, but they have rather big consequences when they do occur. You also see that small mistakes can cause big problems. We know this from our clients. We know this from sometimes issues with Yamdu. We know that if something occurs, even if it's a tiny thing, the actual result of that can be quite significant. So that's something we always keep in mind, that a slight misunderstanding, something we may not have fully explained clearly, or something that allows for several different options to occur, if it's not clear, one small thing can lead to significant consequences. But we're here to avoid these things, of course. Manually watermarking info, as I mentioned, is not easy. And with limited reporting oversight comes a huge time drain. Did I send that? Has it been received? All of these questions that can then just lead to a sense of uncertainty about how things are developing. So these are the things we want to take a look at today. And just to give you a sense of the agenda for the next, I would say 30 minutes or so, it won't be that long a meeting, and we'll leave some time for questions and answers. We have cast and crew management, of course, hiring, managing, storing information. We have file management, so any files that could be either created in Yamdu or created externally and then saved in Yamdu. We have the generation. We have lots of exports and lots of things that anyone working on the production can create when they need to without having to manually collect information. And then we have travel management, quite a new tool. So we'll take a look at how you can manage not only how person A is getting from B to C, for example, but also where they're staying for how long. If they're traveling in a car, who are they going with, for example? All of these different things. And then finally, and I think probably the most important aspect today will be distribution. So we launched approximately 6 weeks ago, I think, our new distribution tool. We previously had a slightly different structure with announcements, which were more kind of loudspeaker events, megaphone things, pieces of information you had to communicate to people. That's been there from quite early within Yamdu. But we wanted to create one centralized distribution hub to make it easy to send, to oversee, and then to track messages quite coherently. So I think at this point, we will now jump directly into Yamdu and take a look at the primary production office benefits. So let me now share my screen with you, and if someone could kindly, once I've shared it, let me know if it's there and you can all see it, then I think we're ready to proceed from this point. So just give me one moment and I will share my Yamdu. And I hope at this point that you now see my Yamdu interface. If not, let me know, but I think it's good. And yes, okay, it seems like we've got some icons, everything is good. Great, so let's start right at the beginning. We're working on a project and we're using Yamdu. I'm not going to the company area right now. I'm not going into more elaborate long-term features. We're starting right in the here and now within a project. In this case, you can see it's Love at Sunset. It's a feature movie. And here is my dashboard. So immediately, I'm trying to center myself in the project and understand what I can see and do. I can see, for example, that there's a welcome message to anyone joining this project. We can see that there are meetings and events taking place, and I can see, okay, the directing department is meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. I might not be involved in that, but I know that meeting is taking place, for example. And then I can see my tasks as well. So I can see, okay, I've got various things I'm keeping an eye on. I've either created tasks for myself or I've assigned them to other people. So this is an area where I can see this. I can already see that, okay, we had to rent some equipment and it's red, which tells me that it's already gone past the deadline date, which means I want to jump right in there and see what's going on. I can also mark objects too. So if something is tricky or it's proving difficult, or I just want to remind myself to check in on this thing, whether it's a costume issue or the production scenario we're building, or whether we're waiting for some changes to a shooting schedule, I can just add them here. They're on my dashboard, and it just reminds me each time I log in that I can check these things out with a single click, go right there and see what's happening. And you can see too, of course, a live feed of information. So always within Yamdu, you get this very clear sense of what's happening in real time. Now you'll have to excuse for this webinar, it's me or the character James Miller putting together lots of detail and adding some tasks and so on. But this is usually different people doing different things, and you can see in real time how all of those things are evolving and updating. So you enter Yamdu and immediately you can take the pulse of the project. Where are we? What am I doing? What are other people doing? Is there new information for me to see? Has someone, for example, even written a comment to me directly asking if something is unclear or whatever it might be? So starting from the beginning, you're, of course, working on a project and you're working with other people, whether they're cast or crew or external people or people in some office in another country that you may not meet directly, but you'll be communicating information to. So right from the beginning, you have a crew list and you have a cast list. So I can immediately go in here and see everyone that's working on the project. I can see the departments, I can see the positions, I can also see whether or not these people are on set. And if I need to communicate with them, then I can find their email addresses, their phone numbers, other details. Everything is right here. So right from the beginning, I see the people I'm working with, I know who they are, and if I add a new person to the project, I can invite them. For example, maybe we did a hiring session, we found the right person, and now I can say, okay, I'm inviting you to Yamdu. I'll just enter your email details, give you the access rights, or Yamdu will prompt the access rights you need, and then you're ready to go, you're in the system, you're part of the conversation. Also further down the line, if you've worked on several productions with Yamdu, you can basically import people from previous projects without having to re-enter information. So we can see here we have the crew, and I can also show you that we have the cast, for example. You can see here, if I scroll down to cast, that we, of course, have a list of characters to begin with. So we can see, okay, we have 7 different characters in this short film structure. We can also see here that we have different views. But we can always see how things are interrelated. So we know that the character of James is being played by David Grondin. And because we already have a shooting schedule, we can see right here whether it is, the first shooting day, the last shooting day, when these are scheduled, who their agency is, the agency email, and so on. So immediately, all of the relevant information that we have about certain people, we can find. If I need to find out something about David Grondin, I can click into the character and I can look more closely at his information. So we can see his contact information as a main team member. I can see that detail quite easy. And I can also see as well the agency, their contact detail, who his agent is he representing other people, for example, within this project. And I see, Jen, you've added a couple of questions as well. On set basically means, yes, if they're on set or not. It's not at the moment. It basically means generally if you mark them as on set or not. And then you can see too that when it comes to dudes, yes, it would normally be the ADs doing that. That would be added in the shooting schedule. And I will come to that later just to give you a sense of where that information is drawn from. But in this case, please just take it as a given that we have a shooting schedule already added with all of the dates of production. And then for each person, I can see quite clearly when they are shooting. So we have a simple, 1 week shoot here, but I can see when it starts, when it ends, the scenes that this person is in, the number of shooting days, all of the related details. It's all here. And it's not just for actors, for example. It will also be there for all of the production design elements, the costumes, the props, all of that detail. So I simply wanted to point out that we have all of the crew and the cast, basically all of the personnel involved in this project in the system with all of their contact details. And the other thing is, of course, that we have a centralized file and document management area. So if I click in here, you can see that we can organize all of the information of the project into these different rooms, including, for example, contracts where I could go in here and for every crew member and cast member that we add, it will automatically create an area which would be limited to higher level producers, line producers in the production office, including then who they are. Do we have different details? Do we have deal memos? Have we signed contracts? Do we have draft contracts? All of that detail can be managed here, and of course it's limited to only the people who should be able to see that information. So you have this contract management structure that is for crew, cast, and then all of the other things you might require, whether it's bank information, insurance, vendors, anything you would like to add, you can add, and it provides then a very clear structure here. The great thing is all of the information you add here is usable in distribution. So if you have a contract for cast member A, you can send that through distribution, go in, find the information, distribute it directly then however you would want to. So it's not just storing information, it's making that information something you can work with. What we found people do a lot actually is create like a distribution exports area. And the example the client gave us was things are changing, things are being updated. So I put the main exports we have, whether they're size or whether they're production scenarios or shooting schedules, all in one place. And then as they change, if they're updated, I just add the new version. I keep the same title because it will just version automatically the information. And then I always have the latest information in one place. So it's like this Bible of up-to-date detail that I can send out whenever I want to anyone who needs to see it. So files and documents is this centralized area where everything can be managed. And if I do want to send something or share something or distribute it, I can also do it here. I can, okay, this is a short list about, I think, allergies, which is maybe not the best example, but you can see that I can send this right here to anyone I would want to receive it. I can also download this with a watermark if I want to as well. And I can also, yeah, basically do whatever I might need to with this file. So everyone in my project, all of the actors, they're here, they're ready to be selected for distribution, and I can then review this, I can save it as a draft, and of course once it's sent, I can see to whom it has been sent. So that's the idea of file storage within Yamdu. We'll see how that relates to distribution in more detail shortly, but I want to just move on to a couple of other areas first before looping back around to distribution, where we'll kind of do most of our exploration. So I hope it's clear in terms of files and documents and how you can store things. You can also link to external things and comment, of course, generally throughout Yamdu. Let's jump to tasks, because I mentioned, okay, you have this place where all tasks can be overseen. So at any point you can see, you know, what are my current tasks? What are the tasks I created for other people that I'm tracking here? What are the deadlines? Who are these things assigned to? What is the status? And also in all tasks, we can see what's overdue, what is in progress, and what has been completed. So you have this all-in-one task management structure, either to remind yourself of things you want to do, or simply to keep track of things other people are required to do. You can even create subtasks too if it's not simply one thing, if it's multiple things that are required by your team. So you have tasks, you have deadlines, and all of those feed into your production calendar. And again, you can make this whatever you want it to be. You can see in this example, I'm keeping track not just of where the production currently is in terms of the production schedule. Are we currently shooting? No, we're in the kind of location scouting, casting part of pre-production, and I can see the strips there as the weeks go on and how these things develop. And I can then see all of the different meetings and events as well. So I can see, okay, we have a couple of recce's over the last few weeks. We had a rehearsal at one point in a certain room. There was a permit meeting, perhaps with the city. And we have a recurring pre-production meeting that takes place every Tuesday, usually at 2 p.m. So you can see all of these. I see another question. Can you choose who can see these tasks? Yes, so tasks are generally just shared with the person who's doing them and the person who receives them. So you have these different ways of managing it. When it comes to events, you can actually hide events too from people who should not be aware that they're taking place, not to keep that information from them, more to just ensure that they're not getting information that's irrelevant. And yes, Jen, to answer your question, it is a pre-production calendar in calendar view. I'll show you in 1 second where this information is coming from, because we also, of course, have a Gantt chart view as well. So this is a mixture of events I'm creating. You have some recurring events. You can track everything. You can say, okay, some people are in Palm Springs for 2 days doing a location recce. You can see even that we have some to be confirmed events, like a costume fitting that hasn't yet taken place, and we're not even sure if that will take place tomorrow in this example. And yeah, you can see, okay, the heads of departments will meet. We have a deadline for the equipment that passed a couple of days ago that I mentioned, and we have some deadlines at the end of next week that we should also keep a close eye on. So this is where everything collects. You can filter this calendar, you can subscribe to it if you want to send some of that information out externally, and you can also export a PDF if someone says, what's the plan right now for this month? If a producer requests this, you can export this and send it directly in a couple of seconds. So you have this overview, and as we see here, we have location scouting and casting. That detail is coming from a different schedule, and that schedule is here, the production calendar. So let me show you what that entails. You can create as many production scenarios as you want. You could have a pre-production schedule that is just pre-production. You can have a post schedule. You can have a financing scenario where there's just a few steps with some milestones, just things to remind yourself about. Or you can have like a general production scenario. And please excuse this very simplified version, but when I come with a 40 step schedule, it can sometimes be overwhelming for people to communicate the information. You can see in this simplified version here, I have mapped things out like this, from development with just a couple of steps in terms of script creation into pre-production, casting, location scouting, and then into shooting. So the information we saw in the calendar came directly from here. You can see too that we have the production information, so we can see when we're shooting. We have the post-production information, so maybe that's actually starting or overlapping even with shooting. And as you can see here, everything can be moved forwards and backwards. It can be changed, it can be extended. You can add dependencies between steps. So all of these things can be built out. This is, again, a very simplified, easy to read and easy to communicate production schedule. You can also have a production schedule with 500 steps, with multi-episode steps, all of the details you might need to add. And again, you might need different schedules for different people. There might be a little preliminary pre-pro schedule that you used in development and into early pre-production, and then you build the actual thing at a certain point, and that can simply take over from this version. And at any one time, you can have multiple schedules running concurrently. So if you have multiple active schedules, they will all feed into the project calendar. So it's a very convenient way to communicate to everyone on the production. This is where we are right now, and you don't need to be concerned about how this project develops, because you can see, and all of you in each of your calendars can see how these steps move forward over time. So I hope that's been clear in terms of managing calendars, seeing what events are taking place, seeing when events are taking place. Maybe when it comes to the rehearsal, we know that room 223, somebody has the key for that. Somebody needs to be there at 11 on Wednesday to unlock it. Someone needs to close it up afterwards as well, because we just booked it for a day. All of these different considerations that will be taken into the equation can be kept track of here. And this is personalized too. So I see my events, I share my events with the other team members who need to see them, but not everybody needs to see everything. So you can always then manage how people can see things, and you can oversee at all times who can see what, who is invited, who's involved, all of the other details, where does it take place and for how long. And Jen, to answer your question, when you have multiple events, the calendar simply adapts to the size. So if I start moving all of these meetings into the 8 here, you can see that the calendar just grows with the amount of information that you add, so that no information is lost. If at some point that's kind of unwieldy and it's too much detail, you can also switch to a weekly view and see details in this sort of perspective. You can also see day to day how many events are taking place and when and for how long, and all of the other details like this. So you have several different views to work with, and you can always keep track of this right here. So what's happening each day, day by day, which meetings when, and I hope that's, again, quite clear and straightforward. Okay, so we looked at the calendar, we looked at the production calendar and how they interact. Unless there's any other questions, and again, I'll check afterwards so we can always come back here. I would now move into travel, just to give you a sense of what you can do in terms of managing how people get from one place to another. And sorry, I just see Fred, you were typing, but I see your question now. Yeah, currently I'm just showing you one project. I will zoom out after this and show you how you also have an overview calendar with all projects feeding into it. So that's a very important question, and I will show you that as well. In fact, while I'm here, let's just do it. I'm going to jump now from a project calendar into my calendar. And you can see it's immediately grown here. and there's more events because now I'm outside of any one project. I'm in my calendar right here on the top of Yamdu. And let's move to a month view because again, then we can see that information from different projects feeds in here. In this case, I have one active project or one project with detail, but everything would collect in this area. So many different projects, all of that detail would feed directly into this calendar. So always keep in mind that at the overview level here, information feeds into my calendar, which is a collection of information from all projects. And that extends to other areas in the company area here, which is great for long-term details or long-term information, because it would also include then production calendars from different projects, which is something that was a real bugbear for lots of people. Again, I'm sorry that I can't illustrate this with multiple projects, but it would show you if you had 50 projects, you'd see all of them here, and you could see right now at this moment, where do things stand? You could also extrapolate and say, well, January is going to be quiet, or in January we have so much going on, we have to be very careful about how we manage this, or we're going to be overburdened. So Fred, I hope that answers your question. I'm just going to jump back into the project again. So it's Love at Sunset. You can see here I have multiple projects here in my Yamdu and multiple pieces of information. And Stephen, just to answer your question as well, briefly, how can I manage who can see what? First of all, at a crew list area, I have access right control. And I would warn you in advance, don't be immediately thinking, okay, that's a huge amount and volume of detail. These things here simply relate to the functions on the left. It becomes second nature in a couple of days, we know from experience. And okay, Yamdu prompts you and suggests these things initially. You can always change the access that someone has to information very easily. You can do that here, and just to briefly show you too, you can also do that everywhere in Yamdu. So you don't have to go back out to crew to change who can see what. If I'm in development, for example, and I want to see who can see a script, whenever I go to that object, I can see the access rights here. So I can always see who can currently see this detail. And if I want, I can also change the access directly in files and documents. So again, I hope that makes that clear. And I hope you can see how easy it is. If I go in here, something is sensitive, and I feel uncomfortable, let's say, about Al or Brian seeing this or being able to read this or being able to write and edit the information, then I can very easily say, okay, I'd rather if they do not have access to this, save it. And again, I've overseen it, I've kept track of it, and I know now that they can no longer see that thing. So Stephen, I hope that answers your question. And if you have more details, just write them out and I can come to them at the end as well. Okay, so let's jump to travel. And again, just to reassure everyone, I'm not going to go into every Yamdu function. I want to give you something that you can kind of tangibly recall and give a clear sense of the production office and the coordination perspective. I'm just going to go now to travel, and we'll discuss a couple of other things after that. But in travel, I think I actually almost pre-prepared a few things because there's a lot of detail. In the travel overview here, we can see for every crew member and for every cast member when exactly they are doing something. So if the production team is traveling to LA, for example, or from LA to a different place, we can see this. So I can see for each person, okay, when are they traveling? Where are they staying? How long are they staying? Are these things confirmed? Or in James Miller's case here, do we have a draft of what he plans to do? He's not flying, he's going to be driving from one location to Beverly Hills in this example and staying at a certain hotel. So we have an overview for the crew here, whether it's approved or not. We can jump in and get more information about what exactly this person is doing when they're leaving, when they arrive, and so on. And we can also do this for cast. So we can switch to cast and see, okay, when are our main stars, for example, traveling? When are they leaving? And we'll just scroll through and we can see, okay, they're going to be traveling at a certain point, staying in a certain hotel. So all of these things, all of these pieces of information aren't just appearing out of thin air, as I'm sure you're aware. They're coming from these journeys that we've created. So you can see I've created several different journeys here. for different groups of people, whether it's an individual. Let's say Kevin Wright is our main star, and he's traveling alone in a private jet. Bad example, because we want to encourage maybe more environmentally friendly ways of traveling. But you can see that, okay, he's traveling alone, but other people are traveling together, or they're driving together, or they plan to travel together. So I have all of my journeys outlined here. And what does a journey look like? What's it made up of? It looks like this. So let's say we need to get the production office team from New York to LA. Maybe an unrealistic scenario, but let's just use this as an example. We have, in this case, 6 or 8 people who are going to be traveling together. So how do they do that? Well, they're going to fly first, then they'll take a train, then they'll get picked up by a taxi, and then they'll be taken to a hotel for 2 weeks or whatever amount of time it is. So we can add all of these different legs. So each person, when we create this and when we send this out, which is part of the process, they'll receive that information. So if I'm Saeed in this example, I'm going to receive a message telling me, here's what's happening. You fly at this point, you travel like this, you're staying at this hotel, and all of this detail. And that then is sent to each person, and they receive that information. And we can create PDFs. So Jen, to answer your question, yes, you can create a PDF of the journeys, of the details that need to be shared or that are shared. So you have all of this detail coming through. You can even add, for example, the types of energy, if that's possible. You can add the travel documents for each person. So you can say, even in one message, hey guys, here are the legs involved. Here are the boarding passes for each of you. Maybe they're good friends and they're okay with everyone receiving the information together. You can always do this individually too. And yeah, you can kind of keep track of all of that detail right here. So the costs, the environmental information, the type of flight, the booking number, the vendor, the emissions, when people start and finish. It will even factor in time zone differences as well, so that the system won't get confused if you leave at a certain point in one location and arrive then at a confusing time in another. It'll factor in that there are time differences between the places. So I can enter where we're traveling from and to, and then keep track of all of that information right here. And then, as you saw, we have all of these different journeys taking place with different people. So if I'm ever questioning how is Steve getting here, I can check exactly. He's flying from Atlanta to LA, for example, with Teddy on the 16th of October. I can export this detail, so I can export a CSV, an Excel, all of these different types of files, zip files. And when I want to, I can also send this information to the people. So they receive all of the information from me, all of the detail. And again, this is something that people can test and try out and explore in their own time if they want to. And they can always reach out to the team if you want to get a personalized demonstration or a trial of the travel tool. That's something that can very easily be done. Also here you can see that you can track transportation. So you can see maybe there's team members that have vehicles that they're willing to drive, or maybe the production office, maybe one of the assistants is willing to drive to the airport to collect a person, or they're willing to go and collect some item that needs to be found on the other side of the city. You can just log the fact that there's a car available for these things, and that Brian, for example, is someone that can do this, or he can pick up 4 other people, or he has a big enough trunk that he can take a cabinet or a chest of drawers or anything that might be required, a lighting rig or a camera or whatever else. So you can track that. You can track vendors that you work with. So if you work with a taxi service or a rent-a-car, you can also very easily add their detail and know who to contact and when. And you can also then keep track of the accommodation. So on this project, let's say we're working with these 6 different hotels. You can keep track of whether it is a boutique hotel, whether it's an upmarket hotel, all of this detail, the contact people, the information, and also how many people are staying there, how many rooms are booked, how long they will stay there. All of this detail is collected and stored here. And Jen, to answer your question, and a vital question, yes, Yamdu is an online system. It requires an internet access. You can export and download information in advance, of course. And we always say that, you have to, of course, work with the system. If you're shooting at the top of a mountain in the Alps and you know that the internet connection will be spotty, then you will, of course, need to export some information in advance, or know the detail or confirm, for example, that there will be something available, or there will be a window, or there will be a hotel or a restaurant or somewhere where I might be able to have the connection. I need to check something if required. But to answer the question in a short way, yes, internet access is required to use Yamdu. So just to jump quickly from travel to sustainability, you need, of course, with locations, or not need, you have the option with these places, with any locations you work with, to input the kind of energy they work with, whether it's an energy mix, whether it's renewable, non-renewable, whether it's a generator of diesel or anything else. You have also here catering information collected. So you have a great count that you can share with craft services, for example, saying, there's 30 people on set. One person is an omnivore, everybody else is vegan, vegetarian. Some people have no dietary restrictions whatsoever. Some people are willing to forgo meat. All of these things can be tracked and shared. And finally, with travel, you can see too an overview of that transportation detail. So how many flights do we have? How many train journeys do we have? We know this varies massively across the world right now. So in Europe, for example, in Germany, France, the UK, there is a lot of encouragement of effective environmental ways to travel. So if you can show that you were able to have 25 train journeys rather than 17 flights, it of course reflects very well on the project. It might also be required for tracking, for example, or even for budgetary reasons, that you get a grant based on the environmental impact of the shoot. But okay, let's go to the main area now that we want to take a look at, which is not accommodation, but distribution. So just to reiterate, we've taken a look at, how to manage cast and crew information, contracts, files and documents, and how you can store everything, task management, of course, and also travel and calendar management. So all very general, important project-related tools. But of course, we also need to keep track of distribution. So there is a huge cavalcade of information that needs to be stored, shared, and kept track of. And this is the area where you can do that, distribution within Yamdu. This is where you can send information, where you can send announcements, our kind of loudspeaker concept, where the call times were pushed tomorrow by 2 hours, that kind of information you can share right here. You can also track mailing lists as well. So if you have lots of different people you're communicating with, or perhaps you have 5 people that will always need to be in the loop for certain types of messages, you can add them here. And before I dig directly into distribution, one very quick thing. Watermarking within Yamdu. In Yamdu, in project settings, under export, not only can you manage, of course, the PDF header of the production so that everything looks correct, but you can also then manage the footers for exports and so on, and formats. And here you can define the areas that should be watermarked. Not everything needs to be watermarked, but in files and documents, here you can basically say, if it's a script, if it's a contract, watermark it. That either means that it's the name of the creator of the watermark, or it's the person who receives it. So if I need to send out one file to 50 people, I can have it so that each of those people receives their own individually watermarked information. And if it's a call sheet, or if it's a script for a high-profile project, if that somehow gets into the wrong hands, it won't take too much work to, figure out who it was that actually sent that, or leaked it, or allowed it to get out, or wasn't careful enough with the detail. But sorry, that's just a quick aside. Let's return to distribution. So here in file distribution, I have a list of sent information. And just bear with me for a second while it loads. I can see everything that I have sent out over the past while. I can also see draft messages that I may have created. So let me just show you both options. Here are a couple of messages that I have prepared that I haven't yet sent, because maybe the information isn't fully there, or I'm just waiting for the moment where it's ready to go. So I can have that information here. The messages are created, the detail has been added. I can even see here the messages that I'm creating. So I can see here that, okay, someone is looking for the cast list for catering, for example. That's one of the exports we have in Yamdu. So I exported that. It's now attached here. So it's the file, or the multiple files are here. I can then choose who the recipients are, whether it's Al, or whether it's everyone in production, or whether it's, a department, whether it is external contacts, agencies, or whether it's, one of the actors or one of their agents. All of the people on my project are here to communicate with. In addition to that, I have my mailing lists, so I can always see, these groups. And yes, you can create distribution groups, and you can see some examples I created in advance. So I can create a group and say, okay, I always want to be able to send some pieces of information to the heads of the creative departments. So here I have costume, location, production design, and makeup collected. And if I want to send information to them, with one click, they're all added. It's ready to go to them. Same with catering, same with the financiers, the producers. You can create as many mailing lists as you want, or you can just manually do it when you feel that's the better option. If you think, okay, I know there's like 6 people who need to get this file, I can just quickly run through and select them now, or I can add them to a mailing list, or maybe I've already created that mailing list in advance. And also, just to save time, if I add like 15 people here and I think, God, that would be convenient for that thing I need to send next week, I can just click Store as Mailing List here, and they'll now be added to my mailing list for future use. So yes, you have complete control over how that's managed. And you can see here, if I'm unsure about what I'm doing, if it's the first time I'm doing something, or let's say it's a super important producer and I don't want to make some embarrassing mistake, I can always send a test email to myself and see exactly what it's going to look like. So we always recommend that, especially in the early days of production or pre-production, or the first few things you're distributing. Send it to yourself, take a look, and just make sure it's the way you want it to appear. So yeah, you can go in, you can write a message, you can make it bold, you can change some details here, you can add a subject line, of course, and you can pre-create your signatures so that it's one less thing to worry about. It's there, everyone can see the detail, and if they need to, they know who to reach out to. I can always send a copy to myself if I want, just to be sure. So, I send it to Al, but I also want to make sure it's coming to me too, just for peace of mind. Fine, click send a copy to me. And you can see here, we can either add files directly from my computer, for example, or we can add a file from the project. So again, we have files and documents. We have a huge volume of information that we've added directly to the system. So if I'm looking for a call sheet or a script or a contract or whatever, here I can go in and take a look. So, okay, files and documents, I need to find that contract that's added to whoever, that's part of whoever's thing. And I have access or I don't have access. I can see for various people information that's been added. I can open up files and documents, I can close it, and I can go to all of the various different areas here and select the detail that I want to share. So I can draw from information within Yamdu, or I can simply add a file on my desktop. I can send it via email, or if it's a larger file, or if it ever exceeds 9 megabytes, I can send it via a link as well. So I can send it out directly to anyone who needs to see it. So here I'm sending this file. I can save it as a draft and come back to it later, or I can finally say, okay, it's Al Goldman, all looks good, I'm happy with the email, and now I can send it out directly to him, and it's been sent. It's no longer a draft. I won't see it under drafts anymore. I will now see it under sent. And I have then this complete overview of everything that I've distributed, wherever I've distributed it from. So everything basically feeds into this area of file distribution. And I can see there it is. I sent it today. I'm in Munich, so you can see it's 2048 that I sent it at. And I can see that it was sent to Al Goldman by me. And here are the files that were shared. And not only that, and he might be a bad example, but you'll see what I mean. I can see, okay, what is the status of the message I sent? In this case, this is a fake email. It's not much use, but I can see the message, the file that I attached, the subject line, and I can also, and let me just open something that I sent to more people. I can also see here a better example where, again, ignore all of these Yamdu emails that are blocked because they simply don't exist in real life. But you can see here we have examples of ones that have been delivered, because we can see that the email provider on the other side is letting us know a file has been delivered in this case. And we can also see that Saeed actually opened the file that I sent him. So, okay, in most scenarios, it will hopefully not be all blocked like these Yamdu addresses. It will be more delivered, seen, opened, pending, or even rejected. It's better to know that something was not received than to be unsure. And if let's say someone has a spam filter, someone has some problem with their setup that might stop them from receiving something, I can at least see that. And if I'm unsure about something, I can say, okay, I'm going to just give Gerald a quick buzz and see if he got that, or if there's a problem, or if he needs to rejig his settings to see that detail. So we can see this. We can filter by time periods. We can also create new distributions here. We can create drafts and send them later. And we can see here too a couple of other features. The first one, announcements. It's that loudspeaker megaphone example. So it's not so much distribution, it's more, I have an important piece of information that needs to be shared now with either the entire production or certain people or whatever. So it's this way of communicating things quickly, whether it's inviting or welcoming people to a project, whether it's telling someone some annoying thing like, do not forget the QR code we gave you to get access to the set, because otherwise you're not getting in. We know this is a recurring problem that can occur. Reminders to people for simple things. There's something I need you to do or need you to remember. It's now happened 4 times. We had a big problem yesterday because of it. Everyone, please be aware. Please do not forget, we need the QR code in order to access the set. We had some issues already, and if you have any questions, contact Tony Jones at ... And you can see everyone again that it's been sent to right here, and any files and documents and other details that you sent. So yeah, you have this function directly built with the announcement tool, and with the mailing lists, to answer your question from earlier, Jen, you can do this quite easily. I can oversee all of my mailing lists here. I can create them in the process of creating these distributions, and I can also then add and edit them here directly in the mailing list area. Fred asks if it's possible to import company standard email signatures. Not yet. Very simple answer. Would be nice, but it's not yet possible. You can build it in Yamdu with, I hope, most of the important detail that would be required. But we can keep that in mind, and I'll share that feedback with the team. The one thing I think we try to be is modest. If we miss something that will be beneficial, you can always tell us, and we'll add a ticket for it, and we'll tell you whether it's something we'll do in 2 days or 6 months, or when 10 other people come to us and say that's a good idea. So we try to be honest about these things because we get lots of feedback. Please don't be afraid to share it. We'll be very direct about what's possible. So I'm just trying to think, is there any other things that I would like to point out? I hope distribution is clear, and I hope this oversight of the information is something that would be beneficial to a lot of you. The feedback so far has been incredibly positive, and we've been really gratified to hear that and very excited about what that means for people using Yamdu as their management of information hub and their distribution hub. The other thing I could point out as well is that, what can I actually send through Yamdu? Lots of things. You can send call sheets, shooting schedules, maybe just to jump back to a previous query. Where do the dudes come from? They come from this shooting scenario that was created for this simple shoot. And again, excuse me, usually I move these scene numbers around to make it look vaguely realistic. But you can see that all of these day out of days here are generated from the fact that we created these this shooting schedule. They have the shooting schedule has dates, the scenes are assigned, all of the talents and props and costumes and everything else are linked to those scenes. So then we immediately see all of the detail. So basically the ADs can create a schedule like this. Let me just show you how simplistic it is, how straightforward it is. I can drag and drop things, I can move things, I can change the dates, I can enter the start and end times, I can create off shooting days just as easily as creating shooting days. And when I save this, and this is what I wanted to get to with the export function, the second I save this, I can now export this schedule in a multitude of ways, whether it's a scene ID, like a simplified schedule, a one-line schedule, an overview, a breakdown sheet. I can export the day out of days, all things that, of course, production offices will be distributing over the course of the project. So I can distribute all of these things here directly from the shooting schedule. I can also go into an actor profile, go to their day out of days, export that, and send that as well. So you can go very, very granular. You can export one actor, their dudes. You can export the entire production for characters, for sets, for elements, for anything else. You are not really confined in how this information is displayed, and you can create your own export settings, because with many exports you can customize which information should be included, how it should be displayed, all of the different details that should be added. And you can see here, there's a lot of information. So that's, we generally don't have people coming to us and saying, you're missing something. There's a lot of information that you can choose from. Okay, so I hope, Jen, that answered your question. Colleen, yes, I can show you briefly the breakdown function when it comes to the script. We have a script here that we imported from a Final Draft file. We partner with Final Draft. It's very easy to import a Final Draft file in Yamdu. So here we have, okay, a 12 or 13 scene script. And on the right-hand side here, you can see, okay, we have the characters. They've been pulled directly out of the script. But let's say I want to add a prop. I could either go in here and say, okay, it's not mentioned in the script, but we need a book or a tattered book in this scene. There was one I added earlier. I can select this and add it, and I've now manually said that in scene 1, there is a tattered book that we need to find and that production design will go about locating. But we can also, if we want to, tag things directly. I can go in here and see old map, and I can actually highlight that text and then tag it. So I can say the old map is a prop. Maybe there's an existing element that someone else tagged or that I tagged before that I can link it to, or maybe it's brand new, but I just then say, anytime the words old map appear in the script, I want to add that to that scene. And now I think there's 3 different scenes in this script where old map is mentioned, and it will be added then to each of those scenes. We'll see that in the shooting schedule, we'll see that in the call sheet, we'll see all of that other detail. So Colleen, I hope that answers your question, but that's the breakdown function. All of the things we tag, like the props, for example, are pushed out to the relevant department. So the characters go to cast, where we can then assign actors to various roles. The costumes, makeup, of course, all of that information feeds into those departments. Nick, by the way, I hope you're feeling better, and thanks for joining. You can see here too that we have locations and sets. So all of the sets are collected, and we can assign them then to filming locations. So we know 4 of our sets will be at Ari Studios, and yeah, several other places will be used as well. And finally, just to show you, and imagine we're now in pre-production, all of the different props, like the map and the book and the binoculars and the amulet, all of these production design elements are feeding into this production design department. So they find the information they need. They can go into old map and, of course, start the process of saying, well, we know we need an old map. Maybe they add some images for mood. Maybe they take a still from Indiana Jones and say it's this example we're going for. And then they can suggest different physical objects for the narrative prop. And then at some point, someone can say map A is clearly the best option, and it's added. So of course, from a production office perspective, if you need to export, for example, the production design elements and which scenes they're assigned to, there are exports everywhere. So we can get the production design list, the day out of days with scenes. Of course, people can proactively go in here and find that information for themselves if it's their department, but you can also find that detail, export it, send it, share it, store it, version it, and distribute it very, very easily through Yamdu. So it's not just here, it's everywhere. You have call sheets, you have shooting schedules, you have calendars, you have cast lists, catering information. All of that detail is at your disposal. All of it can be centrally distributed. All of it can be tracked, and you can keep very close attention on who has received information, who has not, who you're unsure of. And if someone says, when did you send me the dudes for character X? You can say yesterday at 10 a.m. And I can also, maybe you wouldn't say this, but you could also say, well, I've seen that you've seen it, so I'm pretty confident that you got the information you need, and there's no need to play dumb. We all know you're up to date on that information. So sorry to give a negative example. There are lots of positive examples where people can say, thank you for sending me that thing I needed. That was very convenient. Or of course, you can proactively say, I got to make sure that that person gets that thing by Friday evening, and create a draft distribution so that you remind yourself that it needs to go, or create a task or whatever else. So from my side, I think that's most of what I wanted to share. And I know we've been here for an hour. I had planned on a shorter one, but I really appreciate everyone sharing their questions and feedback. And Colleen, to answer your question, is there an area where dailies can be reviewed? Yes, there is. Whether it's daily call sheets, whether it is actual visual content, you can actually store visual content in Yamdu. Let me quickly show you what I mean by that in deliverables and marketing. If I have a video file, I can actually upload it directly to the system, play it back, comment on it, timestamp it, and also send it and distribute it through Yamdu as a download link. So you can see I'm playing back a file, and I can jump to a particular point, write a timestamped comment, or jump to a timestamped comment, and distribute that just as I would any other piece of information in Yamdu. And Fred, your question, we used a lot of archive footage in our scripts. Is that also included in the same way as, let's say, props? That's a great question. There are a number of ways to do this. You could add content items rather than props, for example. If it's a piece of footage that's going to be woven into the actual shoot, then you could add that. You could say Pathé Newsreel 1927, for example, and you could have that as a piece of content that will be added to the actual finished project itself. But when it comes to props, just to point out again, quite briefly, because I don't want to keep you all too long, and I'm sure you've got many other things to do, you can create your own customized prop areas. So if you want to add, for example, archive footage here and have its own dedicated area and have that appear in the breakdown area, you can do that. That's your prerogative. If you want to share it with your colleagues, please go for it. And again, I just want to say to all of you, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I hope it's been helpful. And I hope we can help you keep your eyes in the big picture and leave some of the details to us. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And we'll be in touch. So all the best. Thank you.